Hello friends, welcome. Today let us talk about Elizabethan poetry. This is the third topic in the first unit of our core compulsory paper number 102. Dear friends, Elizabethan poetry. The word Elizabethan is perhaps not an unknown name for you, because in the very introductory lecture, when we were discussing about various ages into which the history of English literature has been divided, the name appears there. After Renaissance, the first period that comes in the history of English literature, that is the Elizabethan Age. The other name is the Age of Shakespeare. Shakespeare comes into this time span of the Elizabethan Age. The name of this period is named after the Queen of England. She is Queen Elizabeth, who ruled over England during this period, and that is why this period is known by her name, Elizabethan Age. Now, this is the age that comes very soon after the period of Renaissance. Now, let us have a brief understanding about the background for the topic of this Elizabethan poetry. Among other effects of Renaissance, it inspired in Englishmen two important things: high conception of poetry and enthusiasm for writing poems. Renaissance, as we know, has given so many valuable gifts to the European people. The modern man after Renaissance is a totally transformed man, awakened man, literate, educated, polished, refined man. The European environment got after the impact of Renaissance. So all these are the effects on the English soil or the European soil. The literature is greatly enriched with the genre of poetry. So the Elizabethan period or the age of Shakespeare is very much known for the age of poetry. England's faith in the greatness of letters and particularly of poetry, with which the Renaissance had gradually inspired her, made the poet the first of men. This means that Renaissance placed man, the awakened man of letters, means man of letters means the man who is well aware, well acquainted, literate, and having the literary characteristics or qualities in him. He writes in various forms of literature. So this is a man of letters, and Renaissance gave this gift to the English environment with new inventions in various forms of literature and placed the poet the highest position in the society. Means it made the poet the first of men. Sidney, in this regard, tells us of all sciences is our poet the monarch. Monarch means king. He very aptly says that of all sciences, sciences are different inventions in different fields to help mankind, but poetry or the poet is the supreme power. He is considered to be the monarch of all sciences. This is the saying of our great poet Philip Sidney. The whole generation lived in this fever. In this fever, it is a fever, a kind of wave that runs during the time zone of the Elizabethan age. Between 1557 and 1616, there were 40 noteworthy and 233 inferior English poets who issued works in epic and lyric form. Now, this is the rich treasure of poets in the Elizabethan age. The period is between 1557 and 1616. During these years, there were 40 noteworthy. Noteworthy means very important, to be taken note of, and some 233 roughly. The poets, they issued works, means they gave poetry in epic and lyric forms. Various forms are used by them, but especially we can talk about two major forms, epic and lyric form. Hence, England of the days of Elizabeth has been called a nest of singing birds. See the statement made into the inverted commas, a nest of singing birds. It is very, very aptly said that England has been called a nest of singing birds. Why? Because it is full of poets and their poetry. Poetry is the song of birds, and that is why England is considered to be the era of singing birds, and that is why it is very aptly or rightly said that England has been considered a nest of singing birds in this period. Now let us have some introduction about the Elizabethan age. The last 20 years of the 16th century are perhaps the greatest and the most distinguished in purely poetical characteristics of any period in the history of English literature. The whole history has been divided into many separate periods and ages. The first age, that is the Elizabethan period, and particularly we are talking about the last 20 years of the 16th century. They are perhaps the greatest and most distinguished, because this period is being considered as the ripest fruit of the Renaissance age, and that is why this age has lot many things to offer to the humanity. So these years are perhaps the greatest and the most distinguished in purely poetical characteristics. Poetry is a major form of writing during this period, and it has its characteristics, specific characteristics of any period in the history of English literature. Compared to any other ages, we have this age with specific characteristics about poetry. The volume, variety, and vigor of the poetical production of the period is quite noteworthy, in which Spenser is the central figure. Now, when we are talking or when we are focusing so majorly on the genre of poetry, we should see what qualities it has. The volume means the number of poetry and poets. The variety we are going to discuss at the close of this slide. Variety, so many forms of poetry we have in this period, and vigor of the poetical production. Vigor means efficiency, power of the poets to write such poetry of the poetical production of the period is quite noteworthy. It is to be taken note of, in which Spenser is the central figure. Edmund Spenser, remember the name, because from him we are going to listen lot many things, because he is he is one of the prominent poets in this era. He is considered to be the central figure in Elizabethan age. Every kind of poetical work is presented in it, and every kind is well represented. It is very nice thing that every kind of poetical work, every form of poetical work has been dealt with in this period, and every kind is well represented, means every form has been aptly used, and in each form the poetry has been written in the best possible way. So it has been well represented also. There is indeed no second name that approaches Spenser's, either in respect of importance or in respect of uniform excellence of work. Spenser, again, his name always remains the first. No second name that approaches Spenser's. Means when you talk about Spenser's poetry, Spenser's intelligence, Spenser's representation, the second name that comes very late after him. So he is a very important poet of this era, either in respect of importance or in respect of uniform excellence of work. Uniform excellence. Consistently he gave such poetry that presented him to be the best poet of this era. The whole mass of poetry can be divided into various groups. I talked about the treasure of poetry in this era. Now the variety you see here. The whole mass of poetry can be divided into various groups, each with certain distinguished names at its head. Each group has been given a particular name of its head, and a crowd of hardly undistinguished names in its rank and file. Means along with that head, with a particular genre of poetry, there are so many other names who join him and who follow him with their contribution to that genre of poetry. These groups are named like this. They are sonneteers, means the poets who wrote sonnets. Then satirists, means the poets who wrote poetry with satire. Satire means, in Gujarati we have a term kataksh. Then songwriters, songwriters we have. Then epic writers, epic is a very long poetry. For example, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Iliad. These are the examples of epic poetry. Milton, for example, he has written Paradise Lost, an epic in English language. Writers of poems on the themes and subjects related to the rural life. Pastoral poems they are known as. And lyrists, who include writers of religious poetry as well. Religious poetry. Along with that, there is the collection of metaphysical poetry also, that we have already seen in the earlier lecture. So this is the treasure that belongs to the Elizabethan period or the age of Shakespeare. Now, after this introduction to the Elizabethan age and its poetic treasure or poetic contribution to this era, now let us talk about the very significant and important form of poetry, that is sonnet. We must remember, or we must include sonnet as the head of all forms of poetry that has been written during this period. Now, we are going to discuss all the forms of poetry written during this period, but sonnet is the head of all so far as this era or this Elizabethan age is concerned, and that is why let us try to understand what this sonnet form is. In brief, I would like to explain it to you, because before understanding this form sonnet and its technicalities, it won't be very easy for you to go ahead, and that is why I have prepared a very good slide here for you to understand the sonnet form in a very brief manner. Two slides I have made for this one, and the next one is this. I will show you this one later on, but before that, pay attention to this. First of all, sonnet form has three kinds in English. First of all, the first name, that is Petrarchan sonnet, that you can see here, Petrarchan sonnet. Then second name is Shakespearean sonnet, and the third one is Spenserian sonnet. Now, before going to Petrarchan sonnet, first of all, the name that comes from the poet, that is from Petrarch. Who is this Petrarch? Francisco Petrarch is an Italian scholar and poet during the early Italian Renaissance and one of the earliest humanists. Now, Francisco Petrarch, whose lifespan is from 1304 to 1374. Now, he is a poet, scholar. He is from Italy, and he belongs to the early Italian Renaissance period. Early Italian Renaissance period means the Renaissance period of England and the whole of Europe. And before that, there is the Italian Renaissance period, because while understanding, we talked about the Renaissance that came to England from Italy. So Italy was the original place from where the Renaissance spread to many other countries and ultimately reached to England. So Renaissance came to England from Italy, and so the origin of Renaissance is there in Italy. So Petrarch belonged to that country as well as that period. And from his name, the Petrarchan sonnet written and originated by him is known as the Petrarchan sonnet. Now, what was the scheme of his writing? As we know, sonnet is written into 14 lines. Petrarchan sonnet is characterized by the following core elements. It contains 14 lines of poetry. The lines are divided into an 8-line subsection. 8-line subsection called an octave. Octave means 8 lines, followed by a 6-line subsection that is called a sestet. Octave and sestet. Octave means 8 lines and sestet means 6 lines. 8 plus 6 goes to 14. So this is how sonnet is composed with 8 lines octave and 6 lines sestet. The octave follows a rhyme scheme of A, B, B, A, B, B, A. Now this is the rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme, you understand? Rhyme scheme means the last rhyming words in each line, they are designed in this form, in this pattern. In the second slide, we will see this. Try to remember this: A, B, B, A, B, B, A, and after the poetic turn, the sestet follows C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, E. This is how the sonnet has been divided into 14 lines of this rhyme scheme. Now let us try to see in the diagram in the next slide. See the first column, Petrarchan sonnet. There is the first octave. Octave means of 8 lines, 4 plus 4, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. Then comes the poetic turn. Poetic turn. કાવ્યમાં એક ચોક્કસ turn આવે. Then comes the sestet, means 6 lines. C, D, E, C, D, E. This is the pattern of the rhyme scheme. Rhyming scheme means the last concluding words in the line. They are divided into this kind of pattern. So ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. This is the rhyme scheme of the Petrarchan sonnet. Now let us see the second, that is Shakespearean sonnet. There are 14 lines in a Shakespearean sonnet. The first 12 lines are divided into 3 quatrains with 4 lines each. Quatrain means 4 lines. Quatrain. In Gujarati we have a word chatushpankti. Chatushpankti એટલે 4 પંક્તિઓનો સમૂહ. It is in English said that it is quatrain. 3 quatrains with 4 lines each. Now, what is there in this Shakespearean sonnet? In the 3 quatrains, the poet establishes a theme or problem, and then resolves it in the final 2 lines called the couplet. Couplet means 2 lines. Couple. The word couplet comes from couple. Couple means a pair of 2 lines. So 3 quatrains means 12 lines. They describe the theme or the problem of the poetry, And ultimately in the final two lines known as couplet, the poet tries to resolve the issue or the problem that has been raised in the earlier lines. So the rhyme scheme of the quatrains is A B A B, C D C D, E F E F. Now see the difference between the two patterns used by the Petrarchan sonnet writer as well as the Shakespearean sonnet writer. So there is some difference. You can mark the difference here. In the next slide also you can compare the pattern. So ABBA, sorry, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF. This is the pattern of the quatrains of 4 lines each, and 3 quatrains are there. And after the poetic turn, the rhyming couplet is GG, means a different pattern of GG, means 2 lines of couplet, that is the concluding part of the poem. So AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. This is the rhyme scheme of Shakespearean sonnet. Let us have a look in the column. See the second column. Shakespearean sonnet, quatrain 1 AB, AB, quatrain 2 CD, CD, quatrain 3 EF, EF. Then comes the poetic turn and the last rhyming couplet, that is GG. Okay, so this is the pattern that differs from the Petrarchan pattern. Okay, now let us come back and let us see the third one, the sonnet known as Spenserian, that follows the English quatrain, means the Shakespearean quatrain. The pattern that has been used by Spenser, it is Shakespearean pattern, that is English quatrain and couplet pattern, but resembles the Italian in using a linked rhyme scheme. Linked rhyme scheme. Linked means it has been connected with the earlier quatrain. See, A B A B, A B A B. It is borrowed from the Shakespearean style. A B A B. Then BC BC means B has been borrowed from earlier quatrain B. Second line, fourth line becomes the fifth line and seventh line. BC BC. Again in the third quatrain we find CD CD. C has been borrowed from the second quatrain, right? C D C D, and after the poetic turn we find E E as the concluding couplet. So this is how the 3 forms of sonnet writing has been patterned with their typical particular rhyming scheme. Okay, now let us see the Spenserian rhyming scheme here. Again, quatrain number 1 AB AB, quatrain number 2 BC BC, quatrain number 3 CD CD. Then after the poetic turn, the rhyming couplet, that is EE, means up to here there is D, and EE the concluding part of the poem. Thus, this is the parallel comparison of the rhyme scheme in the 3 different kinds of sonnets. Okay. Now in this lecture we have talked about the background of the Elizabethan age, the Renaissance, and had a brief account of the Elizabethan world of poetry. Now in the next lecture we shall discuss about the major sonnetiers of the age. Okay, thank you very much. We shall meet in the next lecture. Thank you.